Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. What a crazy weekend in the 2024 election. Just 2 weekends left before Election Day. This one involved former President Donald Trump working the drive-thru at a Pennsylvania McDonald's in Bucks County in a truly iconic campaign moment, while much of the corporate media was focused on a brief story Trump told about legendary golfer Arnold Palmer. They're very upset that there was a reference to one's manhood on stage by a former president. You're only allowed to do that if your name is Barack Obama and you're at the Democratic National Convention. You see, he's allowed to make D jokes all day long. But if you're Trump and you make some innocuous allusion to Arnold Palmer's manhood, it's a hard no. That's a violation of decorum. The media is disgusting. As the thing on Twitter says, you don't hate the media enough. Meantime, Vice President Kamala Harris was hanging with Lizzo because she's an every woman, and Usher, him too, and Al Sharpton, because nothing says I'm going to provide a new generation of leadership like hanging out with the OG race baiter, Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton. We're going to bring it to you all today with the EJ's Emily Jashinsky. She's DC correspondent at UnHerd, UnHerd, and host of Undercurrents, and Eliana Johnson, who is editor of the Washington Free Beacon and co-host of the Ink-Stained Wretches podcast. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. This show encourages honest conversations, which isn't easy in today's media environment with big tech deciding who and what gets amplified. Well, there's a news platform that prioritizes free speech and transparency without controlling the narrative. Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that aggregates related articles from around the world, highlighting each source's political bias and corporate influence. Here's an example. Recently, CBS News told their staff not to refer to Jerusalem as being in Israel. And guess who didn't cover this? Left-leaning media. On Ground News, you can see more than 90% of the coverage is coming from right-leaning sources. Ground News has an entire blind spot feed with stories like this that are receiving lopsided coverage. It reveals how media narratives are shaping the conversation, and they're offering our viewers 40% off their Vantage plan, which gives you unlimited access to their website and app. They are independent and supported by subscribers, not corporate interests. Check them out at groundnews.com/Megyn. That's ground, GROUND, news.com/Megyn to take back control of the news you consume. Ladies, welcome back.
Great to be here, Megyn.
Okay, so let's start with McDonald's. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I know that he was over the target because the media truly can't stand it. Like they're having such a vicious reaction to Trump showing up outside of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and in his regular suit, shirt with the cufflinks, serving fries and delivering people's meals. So let's look at a little bit of it. Now here he is walking in and glad handing. Let's look at a little bit of how it went down and listen as well. It's hot one.
Mr. Trump, what's your favorite thing to order at McDonald's?
I like it all. I like every ounce of it, everything.
What a good-looking family. How did you produce those good-looking kids? And there'll be no charge. Trump is paying for it. Is that okay? Hello. How are you? What a beautiful woman. Look at her beautiful child. It's like the perfect-looking person. Hey, look at this guy. I'm not going to mess with him, huh?
How you doing, sir?
You look fantastic. Hello.
You made it possible for ordinary people like us to meet.
You're not ordinary.
I mean, thank you so much.
You are not ordinary.
Mr. President,
Yes.
please don't let the United States become Brazil, my native Brazil.
Oh, we'll keep it good.
Please.
We're going to make it better than ever, okay? Now I have worked at McDonald's. I've now worked for 15 minutes more than Kamala.
It's amazing. Before we get to the media meltdown, let's just stay there because I really thought this was quite genius. You know, everyone knows Trump loves McDonald's. No, Trump has never worked at McDonald's. He was born to a very rich father, as everyone knows. But he eats there all the time. And so he's telegraphing that even though he's got all this money, he really is an everyman. He knows the menu forward and back. And he's drawing attention to the fact that he, like many, doubts Kamala Harris's claims to have worked there, something she's never been able to really substantiate. And it's also just a great photo op in the same way we see these politicians go to state fairs and eat the fried corn dog. This is Trump's state fair, only it's real for him. He actually loves it. So what do you guys make of it?
The photos and the videos were just, they were wonderful. And the purpose of his appearance was to drive the narrative that Kamala Harris never really worked this job, that has been a centerpiece of the biography that she's put forward on the campaign trail. And as a result, there was a ton of media coverage about this event in which the media said Trump is pushing this unproven claim that Kamala Harris never worked at McDonald's. Well, the result was a full day of media coverage of his appearance and of discussion of Kamala Harris's claim and of Trump raising questions about it. And I just thought, this is not what the Harris campaign wants to be talking about 2 weeks out from the election. And the entire day was dominated by Trump. And it was a day he won. He won the news cycle yesterday.
Emily, you just look at this. It's fun. It's fun to see Trump in a McDonald's serving fries, period. Right. But then actually, no, there's more after my period. Not my period, the period at the end of that sentence. That's already been in the news. Wow. Okay. Anyway,
speaking of Trump.
Exactly. What's fun about it, what's important about it, in addition to the fact that it's just good, clean fun, is that's not a dictator. That's not a fascist. That's not Hitler. I mean, the left will continue trying to tell us that it is. But that's the thing about Trump, is like you see him, he does have this great ability to be an everyman. He swears, he makes the occasional D joke. He shows up at McDonald's and that he lives on that food and Hershey's chocolate bars, and Diet Coke. He isn't, as I referenced last week, John Bon Jovi with a glass of wine, literally with his pinky out behind stage after trying to pose as the hardcore rocker in front of his audience. With Trump, what you see is what you get. He did not put on, people are like, why is he wearing that outfit with a friend? He did not put on the tank top, the sleeveless tank top, a stained, what did you want him to wear, right? Anyway, those are the two reasons I think it works, among others.
Well, I think this is an encapsulation of the political genius of Donald Trump. I actually think some of the reaction on the left is proving it, because I think they recognize the political genius is a threat to their own agenda, because it's really, really powerful. And of course, they see that through the lens of like a dictator and his propaganda, that's what Donald Trump is doing, this soft face, putting a soft, smiling McDonald's eating face on fascism. But the premise of that is actually that it's very powerful. And I don't think Donald Trump is a fascist, but I agree that this is very powerful, because to the state fair point you brought up, Megyn, he famously in 2016 exploded the state fair playbook for politicians and outright gave kids helicopter rides. He didn't do the thing where he put on a plaid shirt, rolled up the sleeves, and pretended he just couldn't get enough of the funnel cake and the corn dogs. He was openly a billionaire who was having fun with his money and having fun with the campaign. And I think this is really, really similar to that. And he's not trying to be inauthentic. He's not trying to pretend that he really loves McDonald's. The guy actually really loves McDonald's. He clearly goes to McDonald's all of the time. And he's having these conversations that are way more natural with constituents than any other politician put in that situation, who is given a script, is told what to say about this massive corporation, what he can say ethically about paying for everybody's food. There was that moment where Donald Trump turned around and said, can we do that? Can I pay for everyone's food? Any other politician would be fearfully sticking to their script in a situation where they're giving drive-through orders out to people and making French fries. But it's natural for him. So I agree. I mean, I think it was a really, really high point of his campaign and actually really his political career.
It just reminds you what you like about Trump. He's funny. He's self-deprecating in his own way. And he's entertaining. This is actually what a lot of voters are attracted to. He's not a bore. Good gracious, Kamala Harris doesn't understand that. So this is just a sampling of the media reaction. I mean, the New York Times may be the furthest off the hook. I mean, their headline is birtherism meet burgerism. They're actually comparing him suggesting Kamala Harris never worked at McDonald's to Trump's birtherism claims about Barack Obama and whether he wasn't born in the United States. Like, what? What? Trump has repeatedly accused Harris of inventing this claim, recalling his earlier false claim that President Barack Obama was not born in the United States. Huh? How? And then they talk about how he's put her and her aides in something of a bind. Tracking down pay stubs or other documentation from so long ago would be a difficult task for almost anyone. McDonald's corporate representatives have ignored media requests for corroborating information. And then they go on to say that they have, I guess, corroborated it by a statement from the campaign saying it happened. She worked there, and a friend of Kamala Harris who said she thinks she remembers it. Yeah, to Kamala Harris's dead mother. And she thinks she remembers the dead mother mentioning it. I mean, like in a court of law, you'd be in some trouble, Eliana.
I'm glad we have 2 hours to talk about this. The whole McDonald's narrative is downstream of a really carefully researched and reported Free Beacon report that came out in late August. And that's why Trump has been talking about it. And the Free Beacon report raised questions about Harris's claim to have worked at McDonald's, noting 3 things. The first is that the campaign's story about the job had changed. They initially said she had worked there to pay her way through school. They had to walk back that claim. And they said that she actually just worked there for a summer for extra cash. They walked it back when the Free Beacon approached the campaign with questions. Number 2, it's not mentioned in any of the books that have been written about Harris, nor is the job mentioned in any of Harris's own books. The first time she ever mentioned it was on the campaign trail in 2019. That's odd for something that's become so significant on the campaign trail this time around. Number 3, she was asked for not a resume, as has been widely reported, but she was asked when she worked in a government legal office, a district attorney's office, for every position she had held in the past 10 years. So that's not a resume, but every position, and she did not include this job. Megyn, I'm sure you'll be shocked to learn that the New York Times left those first 2 details out of its story. They do not mention that the campaign's story and details about this job have changed. And they do not mention that Harris herself does not mention this job in any of the books she has written, and that one of her biographers told the Beacon he wasn't aware that Harris had had this job. Instead, they say this is the new birtherism. And while Trump has said she never had the job, that goes beyond what the Beacon was able to report. They say Trump is claiming without evidence. Well, there is some evidence. He's going beyond what the evidence says, but there is certainly reason to question her claim. I wrote in the Beacon's newsletter this morning, the Times report is, to call it North Korean, I think, is not an exaggeration. They leave out important facts that would inform the reader's ability to assess this. And then they cite the Harris campaign as evidence to affirm her account.
Exactly.
It is a stunning display of tendentiousness and dishonesty.
If this is a lie, she is the source of the lie. So why would we then look to her as the person who could disprove the lie?
And
I have to say, Emily, I was thinking about this.
Claims about this have changed, which is something they do not tell their readers.
If somebody said to me, and I think my first job was a spa lady. The first job I ever had was a spa lady up in Del Mar, New York, later to become living well lady. In any event. And then shortly thereafter, I took a job. It was almost contemporaneous, but at this ski shop, like selling ski gear. And I'm not going to say the name of the ski shop just to protect the innocent or the guilty. But if you ask me what what happened inside that ski shop. Tell me about it. I could describe the ski shop exactly to you. I could tell you that I worked there with my best friend, Kelly McGinnis. I could tell you that the guy who owned the ski shop used to wax the skis in the back of it, and he called the ski waxing machine Old Reliable. And he used to joke that he would take me and Kelly back in Old Reliable and make women out of us. Okay. It was 1986 or 7. It was a different time, but we knew it was pervy even back then. My point is, I could definitely convince you that I worked at this ski shop, and don't even get me going on my spa lady days, where the thing I remember most was do not go in the hot tub. Okay, just don't. Anyway, we could go on. I've never heard her do that. I have never heard her really convince me in the way all of us could do about our first jobs that she worked there. It does seem to be something she's floundered on when it comes to her story. And Trump getting out there and doing this reminds you, really, he's authentic and she isn't.
Right. Donald Trump doesn't do this whole thing where he says, I grew up in a middle-class family. He doesn't try to put on the act. He's just openly extremely rich and leans into it. Because other people have written about this, there's something in a lot of American voters that sees an aspirational element to Donald Trump's character. In America, we don't want people to sort of feel badly about their success or their wealth. And when other politicians, Mitt Romney is a really good example, do the thing where they roll up their sleeves and eat the corn dogs, it feels or it strikes people as maybe not that helpful and not that inspiring or aspirational. And I think that's what Trump taps into. In the New York Times of it all, or the media of it all, that's actually a really classic thing we see more and more in these fact checks, is citing either the government that's under fire or the campaign that's under fire, the official campaign or statement or press office as evidence of a debunking. I've seen that multiple times just in like the last couple of months, where fact checkers will cite the person who's under fire as the authoritative source of a debunking or a significant source of a debunking. And it's really insane. Like, it's when the New York Times says Trump has cited without evidence or suggested without evidence, it's fascinating because it's actually them who is doing it, the same thing. They are the ones who are asserting without evidence.
How could she be the debunker if she's the bunker? You cannot be both.
Right. No, of course. And they're the ones who have less evidence than the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign has that excellent reporting from the Free Beacon. And on top of it, everything you just said, Megyn, which is that if Kamala Harris could substantiate this persuasively, she absolutely would be, because she would love those pictures of her in the outfit. She would love telling those anecdotes. I think she's mentioned something about the fries, but she would love to talk about it. She would love to draw attention to it, but she's not. And so here we have, people may say it's just the McDonald's claim, blah, blah, blah. But to a lot of voters, she's talked about it, and it's become a part of her narrative about understanding the plight of the middle class. And if you are a middle class American right now, if you work at McDonald's right now, if your family member works at McDonald's, that really sucks to be lied to that way by the presidential candidate. It does matter to people. It's not just a silly non-story. It is real, and it does have real implications for the way people are making up their minds right now. It's
so insane. Hold on a second. I'm just getting something from my producer here. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. It's led to not just the New York Times piece comparing this to birtherism. I'm going to play you some other sound, but let me just give you this because it dropped this morning from Newsweek. Ready? An inspection report for the McDonald's restaurant in Pennsylvania cited employees not having hands clean and properly washed. They literally, it says McDonald's Trump worked at failed last health inspection. That's what the media is doing today. He went to a dirty McDonald's. What? Who at Newsweek would say, yes, get that up there. Tweet it. Get it out there. Eliana, you run a newspaper. You run a publication. How did somebody say, yes, that's good, go with it at Newsweek?
I mean, that's it. I think this is going to tip the election. McDonald's failed the health inspection.
Clicks.
I mean, if anything,
it's all clicks.
Donald Trump would have liked to have seen that before he went there because he's a germaphobe. Like, I guess suppose.
And Megyn, he had a moment. he had this hilarious moment when he was being sort of instructed on how to scoop the fries into the fry container. He turned to the camera and he marveled and said, "Never touches the human hand." He said that actually yesterday. He made a point to note that when he was scooping the fries.
It's so good. Okay, so here is an August of this year ad from Kamala Harris touting her alleged history working at McDonald's.
She grew up in a middle-class home. She was the daughter of a working mom, and she worked at McDonald's while she got her degree. Kamala Harris knows what it's like to be middle class.
Okay, she knows what it's like, Eliana. A few days later, the Washington Post reported on the ad, writing, quote, "Harris is making her stint at the Golden Arches a part of her story," end quote. Other outlets, including the New York Times, CNN, Politico, and ABC News, also repeated the claim, relying on Harris's testimony alone as evidence. The New York Times and Politico reported she worked at McDonald's between her freshman and sophomore years in college. So there we go. She puts it out there. Everybody runs with it. And only the Free Beacon starts kicking the tires to say, did she? It's the same way that as they've all run with she grew up middle class, when she absolutely does not appear to have grown up middle class. Both of her parents were PhDs, and she's not from Oakland either. She grew up in Canada, right? I mean, like, she's got all these little details about her bio, much like her running mate, that she falsely emphasizes to make herself look a certain way that actually don't pan out.
Right. And what that doesn't capture is that actually the campaign's initial claim was that she worked at McDonald's to pay her way through school, which you're right. Both the parents were PhDs, and the mother was a pioneering cancer researcher. And that's not the type of person that pays their way through school unless the parents make them. And that isn't the case. And the campaign was forced to admit that. And there was just no coverage of the fact outside the Free Beacon that the campaign story had actually changed on this. And what I really marvel at is you see everywhere that Donald Trump is claiming without evidence that she never worked at McDonald's. He has as much evidence for his claim, if not more, than she has for her claim to have held this job. You know, she's offered no evidence for it. So, but you will never see a sentence in any of these outlets saying that she is claimed without evidence.
So what you have instead is a media in full-on meltdown that he went at all. Like, this is ridiculous what he did. You know, who does he think he's fooling? This was staged. This is what we keep getting, that this was staged.
Oh, that part was amazing.
That's my favorite thing, that this was staged. So this is back to Newsweek. Rumors have been circulating on social media that former President Donald Trump's visit to the popular fast food chain was staged. In response to which, Emily, a Twitter follow, Sean Agnew tweets, "Wait, he wasn't actually hired as the new fry guy?" As if
it was
anybody didn't understand this. And let me give you a little bit more of the media reaction here in SOT 3.
Former President Donald Trump put on an apron today to pull off a political stunt in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
There's no logic to it. It's a stunt. He, as you know, appears to be not well, and he's engaged in some really bizarre types of activities during this campaign.
The McDonald's thing can be summarized as yet another event we see as a buffoonish disaster, but his cultists and bosses think was a triumph of populism.
She actually worked in a McDonald's. She didn't go and pander and disrespect McDonald's workers by standing there in your red tie and take a picture.
Okay, that was Tim Walz on The View just a moment ago. And that last bit there, calling this a pander and a disrespectful thing to do, that Trump was disrespecting, Emily, actual McDonald's workers. How?
I mean, that's a crazy position for the campaign to take. They should just say, we're focused on, things beyond political pandering or whatever. I'm not a Democratic campaign strategist by the grace of God, but to say that Donald Trump, who is going to, I mean, he's going so viral, the entire country is enjoying the memes, whether people like actually are going to vote for Donald Trump or not. Everyone is enjoying the memes, and you don't want to, Tim Walz, look like you're utterly humorless and accuse him, who is having these like actually pretty natural conversations that Tim Walz could never have in front of cameras with McDonald's employees and with people going through the drive-thru. I mean, Tim Walz doesn't have an ounce of the charisma that Donald Trump has, whether you love Trump or hate him. He's very successful in those types of interactions. So to position yourself as humorless instead of just moving on to another topic is really, really stupid of the campaign and the media in general. I mean, I feel like I get triggered every time I hear Keith Olbermann talk in that cadence, it's 2007 again. But it's, again, they look completely humorous. They have learned zero lessons from 2016 and 2020, which is that actually sometimes it'll make their case stronger to give Trump a W where he's actually earned it, because then they can begin the work of genuinely persuading people who might see Trump at McDonald's and be like, oh, he's pretty friendly and approachable, and he seems to get along with normal human beings like no other politicians are able to. And they don't actually ever address that. They just treat him like he's Mussolini and he's terrible at all of this. And it makes it very hard for them to connect with swing voters, I think, when they react like that.
That's exactly right. So, Eliana, this is what struck me over the weekend. Mediaite, which used to be actually an interesting website, now has gone far left. I mean, every single post on there is trying to hurt Trump. Every single one. They're obviously on a mission to bring him down. And they post over the weekend the following. Trump serves up McDonald's drive-thru orders and claims Harris lied about working there in all-time bizarre photo op. Bizarre. It's bizarre for a presidential candidate to go into a restaurant and to actually serve the food there. I mean, this kind of thing has been done for time immemorial. But you heard the same messaging from who was that? Barbara Lee on MSNBC, I think it was, who we listened there. Bizarre. He's bizarre. And this dovetails perfectly with the messaging that they're putting out there these days around Trump. Like he's lost it. You know, he's out. Like they're easing into, he's got dementia, he's crazy, he's infirm, and they have to ease into it because they're, of course, the chief deniers of dementia when it's looking them in the face. So they really want to say that all of this, Trump showing up there, was so weird. It was like elderly weird, if you know what we're saying. Wink, wink, hint, hint. But they can't explicitly say it. So it's just, trust us, he's starting to lose it. The whole thing is infuriating, but it's also obvious.
Well, that's the Harris campaign message, which is why they're saying that. I don't really think it's more complicated than that. After trying out a few different messages, the first was joy. I can't even recall what the other iterations of her message were between then and now, but she has settled on he's dangerous, he's senile, he's crazy. And so that's why you see her allies adopting the same message. But the other factor is that I just don't think these people see and take in events and information the way that independent voters or swing voters do. And I genuinely think they may perceive it that way. And so that's what's leading to, we saw polls last week indicating that voters have historic distrust in the media. I genuinely just think that the folks who write for and run the legacy publications process these events differently and have very different reactions to them than normal people do.
They're just not very good at this. I mean, I feel like the Obama team would have had a response out in 30 seconds along the lines of, he wants to serve the McDonald's work. He wants to do the McDonald workers' jobs. We want to make sure the McDonald workers get paid more. We actually want to help the McDonald's workers. We're going to help them buy a house. We're going to help them buy whatever. It would have been more articulate than that. But my point is, it wouldn't have been, he's bizarre. He's disrespecting the McDonald's workers. He's pandering. Hello, the whole entire campaign is a big pander. And Trump did it gleefully, like with a smile. He's in on the joke. It is a different message, and it's a different Kamala Harris than joy, just joyful. And in the beginning, she didn't want to say anything negative. You know, she was just going to be vibes and joy and brat. And then listen to her just last week. Take a listen to this.
And let us be very clear. Someone who suggests we should terminate the Constitution of the United States should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. Never again. Never again. Never again.
It's not feeling that joyful. She did it at every campaign stop. That was in Wisconsin, but we could have shown you 5 others. Every campaign stop. It's the new angry Kamala because, well, we'll get to the polling, Emily, but it's because she thinks she's losing. That's my clear belief.
Well, yeah, I think also the joy message is really, I think it was important for the campaign as she was being like introduced to the American people, and they desperately needed Democrats to get on board the coup train and say like this was an acceptable outcome and this is all going to be great. But the mood of the American people is not joyful. The mood of the American people is that, you know, this is why your point about Obama, how they may have responded to McDonald's thing is important. Like all the Harris campaign had to do was put out a single sentence response and stick to that script when you're sending Waltz on The View. Say, all right, so Donald Trump, we have one question for you. Will you raise the minimum wage? Something like that. Do you support a living wage? Whatever. But because they are so tethered to what they see as the concerns of the American people being, you know, vastly about democracy and all of that. You know, I'm not saying there aren't people who have those concerns, but the mood of the country is angry and upset because people feel like they are suffering and they're terrified about the direction of the country. And it seems like the Harris campaign is discovering this 2 weeks before the election, literally figuring this out about 2 weeks before the election. And it's something that Donald Trump, this is what he knew in 2015 when he was running with a bunch of other Republicans. This is what he tapped into that no other politicians were really willing to understand and acknowledge about the American people. So it's really no like hard thing for a political candidate to get at this point, but it's really hard for the Harris campaign when they are running as a change candidate, but also an incumbent. I mean, it's just an impossible square to have to circle. And so not only did they are they getting to it too late, it's just a really, really hard message for them to sell, period.
I thought of the line. He would have said, Trump wants to serve the McDonald's food. We want to serve the McDonald's workers. Hashtag
so good. You
Harris
should
Waltz,
do this.
Something simple. I'm just saying,
you
like,
should become
simple.
a Democratic
Keep it simple.
strategist.
You know what? They should call me, even though I don't really want to help them. But they should listen to the show because sometimes I give the advice away for free. The media has also made a lot of hay about Trump's comment about Arnold Palmer. Arnold Palmer, famous golfer. I mean, like more famous than Tiger Woods, arguably. I mean, they're 1 and 2 or 2 and 1, whichever. And Trump went to Arnold Palmer's hometown in Pennsylvania over the weekend and got to storytelling. It was one of his rallies. The way he does, if you listen to the Trump rallies, he's always telling you some sort of story. And part of the fun is he's a celebrity. He's been a celebrity his whole life. So he's got a story about everyone and everything. And it's kind of fun to hear his stories about these people since he was in Arnold Palmer's hometown and sort of playing on, hey, Arnold Palmer, a great golfer. He took a turn on his story of Arnold Palmer, though not in the explicit terms the media would have you believe, though the reference was obvious. Here it is.
Arnold Palmer was all man, and I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God. That's unbelievable. I had to say it. We have women that are highly sophisticated here. But they used to look at Arnold and say, man, but he was really something special. And I had to tell you the shower part of it because it's true. What can I tell? We want to be honest. We want to be upfront. It's true.
I
We
would
want to be
submit
honest
to the jury that this is part of Trump's comedy routine. Like, he's doing stand-up, and the media just doesn't either get it or I don't know it. Like, here's a friend of mine, Jake Tapper, not getting it, not appreciating it over on CNN.
You're talking about substantive issues. Is this really the closing message you want voters to hear from Donald Trump? Stories about Arnold Palmer's penis?
Speaker Megyn.
Well, listen, I think that the headline that I read about the rally in Pennsylvania yesterday was the big question, and it's the one that Kamala Harris has not been able or willing to answer, and that is, are you better off now than you were under the Trump administration 4 years ago?
But if President Biden had gone on stage and spoke about the size of a pro golfer's penis, I think you would be on this show right now saying you were shocked and appalled, and you would suggest it was evidence of his cognitive decline. Why is he talking about Arnold Palmer's penis in front of Pennsylvania voters?
Jake, you seem to like that line a lot. Let me tell you that Donald Trump is doing rallies nonstop around the country.
Let me just say something. I don't want to be talking about this. Right. Donald Trump is out there saying it.
I mean, truly, what kind of a former president would take the national stage and make a D reference about another person? Like, who? It would cause every media personality to go into full meltdown. I mean, Jake and everyone else, would it not? Or wait.
There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
For the listening audience, he was using his hands to show large versus small in accordion style. So what do you guys make of Arnold Palmer references? Eliana?
I don't actually think that the media is scandalized by this. I think they know that Trump's appeal is that he's vulgar and funny, and this is precisely what his supporters like about him. What he said was funny and amusing, and it's the kind of thing that people go home and tell their families. You won't believe what he said, and people laugh about it. But I think they're saying this because this is the Harris campaign's message. And so they are repeating it in turn. I think they feel compelled to say it because they dislike him so much. And they want her to win. I don't really think there's more to it than that, but I have a hard time believing that they're really scandalized by that. It was amusing. It was totally in keeping with Trump's personality and his sense of humor. Trump made these jokes in 2016 during the debates. I
was there. I moderated that debate.
Right. He and Rubio
I was
had
10
it out
feet away
about
from
this
him.
kind of stuff. It's not like a new thing that's evidence of decline. This is completely in keeping with who he is.
Yeah, I will give some credit to David Axelrod for a good tweet in response, who wrote, wonder if Trump will continue to talk about Arnold Palmer's long game. He said the whole weird episode raises two questions. Why is this such a fascination with Trump? And two, can we ever again innocently say, give me an Arnold Palmer? It's kind of funny.
That's good.
There is a fair amount of maybe feigned disdain for the comment in the media today, though, Emily. Same as there is feigned disdain for his, quote, disrespect, as Tim Walz said, toward McDonald's workers and showing up at their place of employment and doing their job and learning about their job and calling national attention to how hard they work.
I mean, virtually, yeah, exactly. And which he did. He kept repeating, like, this is a hard job. It's a hard job. I see what these guys are doing. I love McDonald's, every ounce of it. He kept repeating that. Nobody in the rest of the country is interpreting the stunt. It's a campaign stunt, of course. Everybody knows that. Nobody's stupid, but nobody is interpreting it in the way that the media is. I mean, what maybe like a couple of resistance wine moms are, but not the rest of the country. And it's the same thing with what CNN referred to as a vulgar anecdote about genitalia that was on the Chiron as Jake Tapper was speaking. And you just have this out of body moment watching Donald Trump with a bunch of guys in hard hats behind him, and then CNN referring to a very, very innocuous anodyne joke as a, quote, vulgar anecdote about genitalia. It's like, have you guys stepped outside of your newsroom to do anything normal with people that doesn't involve like you reporting on them like they're zoo creatures in the last 10 years? Have you actually sat down for a meal or beer with somebody in a normal part of America where that's appealing to? Have you thought about this at all? I mean, I think that's, to Eliana's point, it's being pushed by the Harris campaign, which is why the media is just more primed to think it's important and to latch onto it and regurgitate it. But nobody in the rest of the country would listen to what he just said. I mean, maybe there's, I shouldn't deny, I mean, I think there are some people, especially probably like affluent suburban women, who don't like that and roll their eyes, and it does make them less likely to vote for Trump or whatever. But that's a small part of the country. Most people watching that would think it was funny or would never think to put it in a headline and be the big takeaway. I think Mike Johnson actually had a great line there. They wouldn't think that that was the takeaway from the rally. So it's just the media being completely out of touch after now having 10 years. 10 years, well, I guess 8 years, almost a full decade to reckon with what Donald Trump was shoving in front of their face. And more than 10 years since the Great Recession. And since some of these fissures became completely obvious, their lack of understanding of the rest of the country became completely obvious. And they're getting worse, not better, which is really depressing.
I mean, I think Trump meant it as a compliment. You know, he was trying to tell a nice story about Arnold Palmer. Show me the man who does not want that kind of thing being said about him. I mean, that's just the truth. He thought he was paying an homage to this great golfer in his hometown. Like, in addition to all the great things you already know about him, there's this one too. I agree with you. I think there's a certain collection of women in particular who won't like it. I don't think it has to do with the affluence. It has to do with probably older women who are more, you know, proper than say we are, and or I am, and maybe like evangelicals. I don't know. They seem to have forgiven Trump for all of his other, you know, comments along those lines. So I doubt this is going to cause much problem. But I do want to point this out. So apparently on The View, Tim Walz did go on to make a quick remark about the minimum wage angle and hit Trump for it, but only after attacking him for his tie. Honestly, I think they wanted these guys in the tank top. They wanted him in like a stained tank top with like a tat on his bicep, or they're not going to, or they're going to hit him for being somehow not genuine in this role. And that brings me to more from the New York Times, where the fashion critic felt the need to weigh in. Eliana, the fashion critic Jacob Gallagher headlines the piece "French Cuffs and French Fries" at Donald Trump's McDonald's gig. Was he really dressed the part? No, concludes Jacob Gallagher. He wasn't. He didn't change into the pedestrian dark shirt and slip-resistant shoes like the rest of the McDonald's staff. Mr. Trump didn't plop on a McDonald's branded visor. He was certainly the only man at the franchise on Sunday packing orders in a shirt with French cuffs, and then goes on to point out to us French cuff shirts, which are fastened with cufflinks at the wrist. Mr. Trump's naturally were gold, are an increasing anachronism. For many American men, they are something to be worn, if ever, at weddings. Then points out that arriving at his rally later in the afternoon, Mr. Trump's blue sport coat was back on. The apron was nowhere in sight. Aha! He doesn't wear an apron anywhere but McDonald's, and he misjudged the moment by wearing his French cuffs. Eliana, how did you guys miss this at the Free Beacon? It's like you're phoning it in over there.
This is like the most, if there was an article best geared for New York Times readers, it would be this. This is like primo content for the, left-wing urban set, that the 78-year-old presidential candidate isn't on top of the latest fashions, is wearing outdated dress shirts. Yeah, again, I have to think that Trump's voters just aren't seeing things this way. They're not upset he didn't wear the visor or these slip-resistant shoes or whatever. I just think they're not seeing it like this. Not offended by his cufflinks or that he's not wearing the latest fashions. And do have to say, I think Kamala's looked pretty great on the campaign trail.
What looked pretty great on the campaign trail?
I think Harris has looked pretty great on the campaign trail. You know,
oh yeah,
I'm not sure
she's constantly dressed in multi-$1,000 outfits. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. No, she's not trying to go woman of the people either in her fashion. Yeah. I do want to say this. So you've got Ana Navarro from The View tweeting out, "Does McDonald's hire convicted felons?" Okay, so by the way. But you're not actually allowed to call Trump that until his appeal is settled. But okay. Isn't it your side that's constantly bitching about the fact that convicted felons cannot get jobs, Anna? I mean, just making sure, because I'm pretty sure that this is a big thing on the left, that we need to make it easier for people who've been to prison to find jobs when they get out. And here's the Drudge Report, which I only recently learned is no longer owned by Drudge, which explains so much. Maybe George Soros bought this in connection with his big radio buy, since he's trying to take over conservative media. And the headline was a picture of Ronald McDonald looking sad. And it says, McDonald, one fry short of a Happy Meal, felon finds work. Then they want to lecture Trump about being mean, Emily. Then they want to tell us he's nasty. Our campaign is the joyful one. You and your surrogates strike below the belt, and America doesn't like it.
When you're also making the grave error, Megyn, of assuming that Ana Navarro is coming to this with any principles that she could even confuse to begin with. I don't think Ana Navarro actually has like a set of ideological principles. I don't know that she ever did or does anymore. And that's true of actually a lot of the people who are attacking Donald Trump for not being principled and not being coherently ideological. Is we see them constantly doing exactly what they accuse Donald Trump of doing, because they basically aren't rooted in anything solid. Their principle is that Donald Trump must be stopped at all costs. So that leads to, it's a principle that I don't agree with some people on the right when they espouse it either, but that leads to, going away from some of the things you're holding other people to, doing the exact same thing. I should say that you're telling other people that they should never do or that it's bad to do. We see it over and over and over again with Donald Trump. It's, he's too focused on trivial details, whatever. And then they put out a New York Times report on his cufflinks, which, by the way, I would be willing to bet most Trump voters do not own cufflinks, even for weddings. So it's
he knows that.
Amazing. Yeah,
he knows that. It speaks to his authenticity. He doesn't care. He is who he is. He's not going to pander in that way. The Washington Post, not to be outdone, they didn't focus on the fashion, but they too were upset that he served McDonald's fries to supporters in stage-managed campaign stop. And there's reporting everywhere today about how the people who went through the drive-thru had been pre-screened by the Secret Service and that they had closed down the McDonald's. It wasn't actually open for business when he was due, as if they're going to take the twice, possibly thrice, nearly assassinated former president and just pop him in there. Surprise, Eliana, surprise. It's Donald Trump. And let some rando lunatic who might hate him drive through and say, oh, I'll take care of this election problem right here and now. It's absurd. Of course, they made sure he was secure in an effort to do this. Everyone with eyes and ears and a brain already knew that.
Of course. I mean, this was a 15-minute choreographed campaign gig. Of course, it was pre-screened people. I do think that was pretty clear to people, but it was also ingenious in that the interactions did look sort of spontaneous and genuine. That's what was pretty smart about it. And I think Emily sort of alluded to this before, that's why much of the press is resentful and angry about it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there's a lot more to get to. Kamala Harris is back with her weird accents out on the campaign trail. And her husband, Doug Emhoff, goes out there with the weirdest, you know how they're trying to appeal to men? I mean, they continue to use him. Mistake. There's some free advice. Mistake. He neither appeals to women anymore, given his history, nor to men. He's not the guy you want to break through to men. I know you failed with Tim Walz. Doug Emhoff is not your guy. And here's a little note to you. Andy Cohen and Ben Stiller are of no help either. We'll show you what I'm referring to, and then we will get to Lizzo and her reach out to the working class as she insults them while getting on her private jet. Don't go away. That's all right after the break as Eliana and Emily stay with us for the show. There's a lot at stake at this upcoming election, but regardless of who is sitting in the White House, the fuse on this economy has already been lit. What a powder keg. Even 4 years of a conservative presidency might not be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, it's like throwing gasoline on a dumpster fire. But one thing you could consider is to protect your savings by diversifying into gold. Have you seen the numbers on gold lately? With the help of Birch Gold Group. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, and global strife. And it can protect you right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, tax-free and penalty-free. And it does not cost you a penny out of pocket. In the last 4 years, the buying power of the U.S. dollar has declined, and the price of gold has increased 40%. Text MK to 989898 to get your free info kit on gold, and consider Birch Gold to protect your savings, and text MK to the number 989898 today. Okay, well, 60 Minutes is back in the news. Amazingly, they still won't release the transcript of their interview with Kamala Harris. This is bizarre. This is getting truly bizarre to me that they're holding on to this thing like it's the Holy Grail and we're not allowed to see it. They come out with a statement now, because just to refresh the readers, I know they know, but for those who have forgotten, because you're living your lives and not obsessing about this stuff like we are. Kamala Harris went on 60 Minutes. Kamala Harris gave this word salad answer in response to questioning over Israel and Netanyahu. And we know that she gave a word salad answer that made no sense because 60 Minutes used that clip as the tease of its interview, and they ran it on their Sunday show, I think Face the Nation, and then again on Monday before they aired the actual interview with Kamala Harris, or what purported to be the actual interview with Kamala Harris. Then when we got to 60 Minutes, they played that same Q&A, but her answers were different. She had a different answer in which she sounded much more cogent. And people started to say, what happened? What happened to the word salad answer? And what does 60 Minutes do to try to make her look better? Turned into a whole thing. They wouldn't comment on it, yada, yada. Trump demanded an investigation. Trump said they should have their license pulled. Okay. And it hasn't subsided. There's been calls even from the outside, former 60 Minutes or CBS employees demanding that an investigation be held, or at least that they release the transcript. If there's nothing to hide, just release the transcript and this whole thing goes away if you didn't do anything unethical. So finally, they issue a statement. They do not release the transcript, nor even, a more robust exchange or transcript of what happened in that segment of the interview. All they do is put out the following. Former President Donald Trump is accusing 60 Minutes of deceitful editing of our October 7th interview with Kamala Harris. It's not just Donald Trump. I mean, it's gone well beyond Donald Trump. That is false, the deceitful editing charge. 60 Minutes gave an excerpt of our interview to Face the Nation that used a longer section of her answer than that on 60 Minutes. Same question, same answer. So they want us to take their word for the fact that the super short phrase that was used in the actual interview did come from the same answer as the word salad did. Now, what we saw in 60 Minutes was not just like 10 words that we heard in the 40-word salad version that came out the day before. They weren't in the first word salad answer, which is why a lot of us were like, where did that come from? Did that even come from the same answer? Or did it come from later down in the transcript? They seem to be saying it came from the same answer, but there's absolutely no proof of that, just 60 Minutes words that it was in response to the same question and part of the same answer. So honestly, then at least put out a transcript of the full answer. Just do that. At a minimum, just do that. Put out a transcript of the full answer so we can see where you pulled from. And how much more was there, by the way? Was there a whole bunch more? How much did you do to cover up for her and make her sound more cogent, again, than she was? So they say, same question, same answer, but a different portion of the response. When we edit any interview, whether a politician, athlete, a movie star, we strive to be clear, accurate, and on point. The portion of her answer on 60 was more succinct, which allows time for other subjects in a wide-ranging 21-minute-long segment. Then, amazingly, they go back to this. Remember, Mr. Trump pulled out of his interview with 60 Minutes and the vice president participated. Our long-standing invitation to former President Trump remains open. If he would like to discuss the issues facing the nation and the Harris interview, we would be happy to have him on 60 Minutes. Just in case you had any doubt, Emily, of their hackery, they begin and end with Donald Trump. Trump is the one making the accusation. No, it's most of the nation at this point who sees what you did, at least the right half. And it ends with, he's the one who pulled out of his interview. And if he has something he wants to say, he can say it to our face. That's really what they did here. What do you make of it?
Well, yeah, and remember 60 Minutes. The reason Donald Trump pulled out of the interview is because of how terrible of a job you have done through his argument. That's the crucial part of this. He didn't just pull out of the interview. He's making an argument himself that they have done a horrible job covering his career, covering his politics since 2016, since that Leslie Stahl hatchet job. Like Donald Trump, it's not just coming out of absolutely nowhere. They've been more favorable to Kamala Harris than they have to Donald Trump. So if you're going to throw that jab, I mean, again, I think it makes them look bad. It makes them look bitter, and it makes them look like they're doubling down on something that most people would look at and say, all right, obviously there's a problem. We saw A, we saw B, and you're not letting us see the actual transcript itself. So we know that there's a discrepancy. You've already proven that. You've already proven one part that you aired is different than the spirit of another part that you aired. You've already proven that the editing is deceptive. So, because we know, we know one of the answers looked differently than the other answer. So we know that there was manipulation, period. And the only way to disprove this would be to release the transcript, and you won't do that. And I think maybe the bigger picture part of this is CBS, and I would say a lot of other dinosaurs of corporate media, but especially those broadcast networks, are not remotely prepared for this new era of news consumer. They don't understand this generation of news consumer. They think they can get away with this by doubling down instead of losing the trust of actually probably millions of people around the country who are looking at this and are saying, wow, you manipulated this. And by the way, people on both sides of the Israel thing who are upset about this. So there's a lot of young people who don't agree with us on these issues and are looking at CBS from the left and are upset about it. I mean, I don't blame them. They're such dinosaurs. They think they can get away with this. They're not prepared that now everybody is used to full transcripts. Everybody wants full transcripts. They're used to it. They're used to seeing Trump on Theo Vaughn or Kamala Harris even on Call Her Daddy, whatever. They can't get away with this stuff anymore.
I was saying to our team, Eliana, that, I mean, of course, I've been a part of countless interviews on camera of people where they're pre-taped and the person goes on and on. I mean, I'll tell you a famous one with Donald Trump. Back in the 2016 election, I said, Mr. Trump, would you give me an interview? And he said, sure, but do me a favor. I don't want to be edited, because we had to pre-tape it. He couldn't do it when I was live on the air. And I said, no, I don't agree. And he's like, I don't want to be edited. I'm like, well, I can't just cede the show to you. You know, we have to do it. I will edit it, but I will make sure all of your points, the substantive points are included, which is what happened. And sure enough, when I sat down with Trump, all he kept saying was two things: China, 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 and the wall, the wall, the wall. And that's fine. We cut it down. He wanted me to have him reference those points 500 times. And in the end, it only wound up being like 15 each. Okay. So that's normal. We do that all the time in television. But what's not normal is to take a piece of the answer that is not connected to the answer that you've released as the answer and sub it in as the new answer in a way that reflects better on the candidate. And then part two is when it blows up in your face and people are accusing you of trying to help her as partisan hacks, to not just say, I've got nothing to hide here. I mean, I happily released that whole transcript of Trump, China, China, China 500 times. You'd be bored to tears, but you'd be thanking me for what I did there. But they won't. They won't even release the full transcript of this Q&A, Eliana, which is very strange and suggests to me they do have something to hide.
So there are a lot of different angles to this. The first is about the answer itself. And CBS's statement says, look, we did this for time. Well, actually, let me take a step back. It's interesting that they essentially address their statement to Trump. Sure, they do owe Donald Trump an explanation, but they really owe an explanation to their viewers, many of whom have raised questions about this. And so I do think it's a red herring in their statement that they focus on Trump. Second, with regard to the answer to this question itself, they say, we made this edit for the sake of time, which of course, everybody knows that 60 Minutes edits. But what is atypical here is that they teased one answer and they aired another. And that is not typical. And that is why people raised questions and became confused. And I found it striking that they don't cop to any error there. There was obviously a mistake made. I wouldn't be surprised if both clips are actually from the same answer, but clearly somebody made a mistake here inside of CBS. I'm sure this is not how they planned for everything to go. And then they end the statement by complaining that Trump didn't grant them an interview when he doesn't owe them anything. And that was really off key to me. He does not owe CBS News a sit down. They, in fact, owe people an explanation for the mistake that was made here. And I do think it's important to note that this is happening against the backdrop of another scandal that's playing out at CBS, which is that the network president and the head of news called morning news anchor Tony Dockapil on the carpet for his interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates. And then the largest shareholder of Paramount, which owns CBS News, Shari Redstone, said she sided with Tony Dockapil on this. And that has been a very public scandal playing out. And so something is not right with CBS, the leadership of CBS, to have these two highly public scandals playing out in the newspapers 2 weeks before a presidential election. Not good.
Yeah, no, there's definitely something very sketchy going on at CBS. They're in the midst of some sort of crisis. And I don't know, I guess we can assume, if they say so, that the answer we got on 60 came from the actual answer to the question, but I'm not sure I'm ready to give them any benefit of the doubt.
We don't know. I mean, the other thing that's odd about this is that typically it's the candidate and the interview subject that actually wants the whole transcript published. And they're saying, I was deceptively edited. That actually happened to Mike Johnson a couple of days later, where he released the full tape. There was somebody on his side who had taped the whole thing. That's very typical for an interview subject. They're taping the whole thing. And he did it and showed how he was edited. It's weird that there's not a peep from Harris's side. It's weird for CBS News and the Harris campaign to be taking the same position on this, which is hide the full transcript. It is bizarre to me they're not releasing the transcript. Of course. But it is atypical in these situations for the interview subject not to be the one upset by such a thing.
That's right. That one with Mike Johnson was on Face the Nation the day before with Margaret Brennan, in which he went off on how the FEMA response to Hurricane Helene has been absolutely dreadful. All cut out. I do want to show you something. So we went back to the tease clip that had been released to Face the Nation. And it's made news now because the long word salad answer on Netanyahu's not listening was removed and something more understandable was subbed in. But they also made an edit to the first question in the exchange. The first question, setting up the Israel problem, elicited a very long, rambling word salad answer too. And on that one, by the time it hit 60, they did use part of what aired on Face the Nation, but they cleaned that up too. They got rid of window dressing in front and I think of the back of it and made her sound once again cleaner. So I'm going to try to show this to you. Let's just start with the first question that was aired on Face the Nation. Okay, the question would wind up the same on 60 Minutes, but the answer would change. This one hasn't gotten that much attention, but I'm just showing you each time they cleaned it up, I think, to make her look better. Here's the first question in the tease clip on Face the Nation.
Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
The aid that we have given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents, Iran, I think that it is without any question our imperative to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. Now, the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles, which include the need for humanitarian aid, the need for this war to end, the need for a deal to be done, which would release the hostages and create a ceasefire. And we're not going to stop in terms of putting that pressure on Israel.
Okay, so here's what's interesting about that, to the point that you were just making about how she's also got trouble on her left flank, right, with the pro-Palestinian people in Michigan. They don't like her. In fact, the latest polls show that the vast majority of voters actually favor Trump over Harris when it comes to dealing with the Israel-Hamas conflict. So she's got to worry about those left flankers in Michigan. And 60 Minutes knows that. 60 Minutes wants Kamala Harris to win, make no mistake about it. CBS News wants Kamala Harris to win, make no mistake about it. And they're in full meltdown right now over any challenges, as Eliana points out, to the narrative that Israel's evil. Uniformly evil. There aren't really two sides. Tony Dokoupil tried to raise with Ta-Nehisi Coates the fact that Israel's got some real defenses to the claims that they're just genocidal maniacs, and they're still dealing with the full meltdown as a result of Tony doing that. Okay, so what did 60 Minutes cut out in the version that aired on its actual show? I'll read it to you. The aid that we've given Israel allowed Israel to defend itself against 200 ballistic missiles that were just meant to attack the Israelis and the people of Israel. And when we think about the threat that Hamas, Hezbollah presents Iran, I think that is, without any question, our imperative is to do what we can to allow Israel to defend itself against those kinds of attacks. All cut out from what aired on 60. What they aired was the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles. Here, watch what she says. This is what made the dance in the real 60 Minutes piece.
Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles.
You can see they edited out a bunch of stuff and went with a shorter answer. And I would submit to you, Eliana, that it's probably not accidental, that what they cleaned up was stuff that was pretty pro-Israel on the front half there, and then left it ambiguous so as not to offend either side. And then they do the follow-up in which they get rid of all the word salad, and we've played that difference time and time again. My point is simply release the transcript. What could it possibly hurt other than your reputation if you did something unethical, or hers if she sounds like an idiot? If you did nothing unethical and she sounds dumb, then there's no question that you need to release it, right? Like any journalist would say, it's not my job to make her sound smarter than she is. I feel like it's one of those two things. Either they look unethical or she looks dumb, or both.
Yeah, all we can do is speculate because I don't know why they're not releasing this transcript. And my speculation has to be that in negotiating with the Harris campaign for her to sit down, recall that when she agreed to sit down for this interview, it was at a point where she wasn't actually doing a lot of interviews. That's a new phenomenon for her. I have to imagine that part of the negotiation was that the network wouldn't release the transcript of the interview. That's just a guess. I don't know that. But it's so damaging to the network not to release the transcript, and their statement was frankly so nonsensical that I'm speculating that must be the case.
I just think this is so interesting that if you go back and you look at that first question, Emily, that the parts they cut out are the first part in which she clearly tries to say Israel's under attack and we need to help them. And then there's the middle anodyne indecipherable part. And then there's the third part, which is more pro-Hamas, right? She's kind of trying to split the baby there because she doesn't want to tick off the American Jews who support Israel and others who support Israel. And she doesn't want to tick off the people in Michigan. So 60 Minutes takes the least newsworthy, most boring part of the answer, the middle part there, and makes that her whole answer, where she just says the work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles. That's what they did on answer one. This isn't even the controversial one. Then we get to the edit that they did where they cut out all the word salad. To me, it's just more evidence of how they want to help her in ways she's not capable of seeing she needs to be helped.
And I think it's also indicative of how the CBS newsroom is at war with itself, and how there are other newsrooms around the country that are at war with themselves too, where you still have old school journalists who who don't care whether they help, whether their journalism is helpful or not to Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. They know that's not their job. Their job is just to ask tough questions and then communicate the answers, communicate people's stances to their audience. And what's sort of unfortunate is that Bill Whitaker arguably did a better job than anyone who's interviewed Kamala Harris or moderated a debate so far at grilling her. And it's interesting, the reason I think this is the case, that it speaks to this internal war that journalists are having amongst themselves, is because of exactly what you said, that the teaser was different than what was aired. And we know both are likely different because the transcript won't come out from what was communicated just in the raw footage. So it's like one person or one team, one editorial team thought this was newsworthy. This was the way to tease it. Another team thought this is what should air, even though it's much less spicy or newsy. And it seems like what you have happening is different people in the newsroom, maybe some of the same people who are now complaining about the Ta-Nehisi Coates interview, influencing different decisions. And that's really the only way that I can make sense of where you would have this discrepancy at CBS, which is very obvious. It's that they can't get, like, they're having an election year meltdown, I think, pretty clearly right now. Like, they just cannot get all on the same page because these differences and disagreements are too strong to me, it's just really simple.
Just release the transcript. There's zero reason not to do it. Zero reason. If everyone behaved ethically at CBS, there is zero reason not to release it. They at least should give an explanation. Why won't you release it? That's not in there. They're not explaining that. And so we're left to wonder, and I think we've got some good reasons to wonder. Kamala Harris was out on the campaign trail. Trump was in, Pennsylvania, and we showed you some of the rally, Arnold Palmer and the McDonald's trip. And Harris went to Detroit, among other places, and found a brand new line of argument. I'm going to play it for you here in Sot 16. No, I'm just kidding. It was exactly what we've always heard from her. Here it is, Sot 16.
This election is about two very different visions for our future. Ours focused on the future, focused on our young leaders, focused on possibility, understanding the ambitions and the aspirations and the dreams of the American people.
Oh, God.
Understanding, like the people of Detroit, we have grit, we have excellence, we have history.
Oh, grit and excellence. She's added grit and excellence in her defense. Now, she's expanding. And this dovetails with what she said to Al Sharpton. She decided to talk to Al Sharpton and, Just take a listen. SOT 21.
Share with our viewers on what has impacted them and what a President Harris will do that understands what needs to go in their pocket, not the Beltway language.
So it's a very legitimate and important question that voters ask that we should respond to on the affirmative without waiting for the question. I often go off script to tell a personal story. I talk about what I intend to build, which is an opportunity economy, which in large part understands the vast majority of Americans have ambition, aspirations.
They do.
They have an incredible work ethic. They have dreams.
Work ethic.
But not necessarily access to the resources that allow them the opportunity to achieve their goals. So when asked this question about how will this affect my life in terms of a voter worrying about the fact that, look, price of groceries still too high. I get it, they get it. And what are we doing to help them actually get through life in a way that they're not just getting by, but getting ahead? We have to have specific policies that do that. And that is what I offer under what I call an opportunity economy approach.
Raise your hand if you're missing the Arnold Palmer dick references. sorry.
Everyone in the crowd is like, everyone, the audience.
Come on. So she says nothing. It'd be one thing if this really were message discipline and she was saying something that's important, like that we all want to hear, and these are great big plans. Even if she were saying the stuff about, I'm going to, get rid of taxes on tips, the thing she stole from Trump. But dreams, ambitions, aspirations, that's all we ever hear. That's it. Eliana, maybe she'll win and we'll meet again and we'll talk about, wow, that message discipline was just amazing. That's what did it. But I don't see evidence that that's what's helping her in the polls. What's helping her in the polls is hatred of Donald Trump.
That's right. She might win. And if she wins, it will be because people don't like Trump. And her inability to pull away from him has been because she is struggling to offer an affirmative vision. What she's offering, and you saw it in that answer, is I grew up a middle-class kid and he's dangerous, crazy, and senile. But she is, it's not that she's not able, it's that she's unwilling to articulate a positive vision for how she would govern the country. Because, she has repudiated a couple of the views, the radical left-wing views that she held in 2019, but mostly her campaign simply has said nothing about them because she's risk averse. She doesn't like to make decisions, and she doesn't want to anger the far left while courting the middle. And so she's just decided to do and say nothing.
She says, Eliana says, Emily, that Kamala Harris isn't offering anything. And there's nothing to hold on to. And that's why she's struggling in the polls. There was a golden opportunity. I mean, she's had multiple, right? The View, what would you do differently than Joe Biden? Colbert, what would you do differently? Brett Baer, would you like another bite at the apple? And she just says, it's not a continuation of his presidency. Well, what does that mean? She says, I'm a different person. Well, obviously, how? How are you going to be different as president? And then Peter Alexander of NBC News gets her over the weekend when she was having her birthday. And he asks her, saying, I'm not going to ask you how old you're turning, but you say generational change is coming. That's what you represent. What does that mean? And listen to what happened.
You have a milestone birthday on Sunday. Chivalry is not dead. I'm not going to say what age you're turning then, but you talk about generational change. What does generational change mean to you?
I think it's about a state of mind, and it is about understanding that we should be focused on this moment. And this is a very particular moment where there is a lot happening in our country that is about innovation, that are about really new approaches to longstanding challenges. And it's a new generation of thinking as much as anything else.
Oh my God, that is classic Kamala Harris, Emily. Just to break it down, the number of phrases, this audience is aware, I think it's about a state of mind, and it's about understanding we should be focused on this moment. And this is a very particular moment where there is a lot happening in our country that is about innovation. that are about really new approaches to longstanding challenges. And it's a new generation of thinking as much as anything else. What? What? Help.
The only message discipline I think that her campaign could have is to stop letting her be the messenger. Like the message discipline that they had before and after the DNC, but especially after the DNC, was them controlling it through scripted TV ads and rallies and all of that. But any time that she has to naturally be the messenger, it's not good, because and I thought with the Brett Baier interview, honestly, I felt like she had the edge. I felt like Biden had the edge, obviously, until the debate. But the wheels are coming off this campaign, and the Brett Baier interview was really evidence of that, because what we're seeing right before it and right after it is more of the meme that Kamala Harris was before they decided to turn her into a brilliant generational talent politician, as Democrats have been insisting for a while. This woman was a meme. She was a joke. She was a joke in Washington, D.C. until Biden's disastrous debate performance, which is why Democrats didn't want to swap Biden out, because they felt like they had no choice but to go with her. And this could have been taken from the vice presidential career she had that left her less popular by some measures than Dick Cheney. She's less popular than Dick Cheney. And that was why. This is exactly why. And they were able to control it by not putting her in front of so many different interviewers. And their decision to oversaturate her in media has been an absolute disaster, because she cannot cut it. She cannot cut it. She might have been able to.
We're seeing it. What she saw in her private polls is now showing up in the public polls, which I will get to in just one second. But before we leave Peter Alexander, he did ask her, Eliana, about her struggles with men. I mean, this is no secret. It's all over every poll, even the mainstream media, lamestream, whatever, corporate, reports it all the time. She knows it. She, denial, as they say, it ain't just a river. Here, watch, SOT 20.
Donald Trump leads, particularly among men, by 16 points right now. Why is that, and why do you think there is a disconnect for you with men right now?
Well, let me tell you, you can look at this audience and you can see that there are people of every background and gender who are showing up by the thousands. And I think it is because they know I intend to be a president for all Americans. And that is how I'm campaigning to earn the vote of every American, not only about their gender, but about their geographic location, and unburdened by who they may have voted for in the past.
Just to be clear, though,
unburdened.
Men still say by 16% margin they're supporting Donald Trump right now. Why do you think that is?
It's not the experience that I'm having, to be honest with you.
You think the men are on board?
Yeah, I mean, look around.
There you go. It's not the experience that I'm having. As if that's relevant at all.
She said the same thing to Al Sharpton. And I do think it would be probably more useful for her to acknowledge the gender gap and to have a message directed at men. It's also odd because her campaign is directly targeting such people. They issued I forget exactly how they put it, but they had like a platform for Black men in which they said they're going to give $20,000 loans to Black men-owned businesses and other, blatantly unconstitutional things like that. Her campaign is absolutely trying to target these voters, and so there's a disconnect in her saying, "I'm not seeing any of that."
I know. It's truly like, look around. Like, is that how we're going to go? The number of men who showed up at this particular rally? Okay, great. Okay, then let's pretend that's real, and good luck on November 5th.
It's strange for her to say, like, I know we're trailing, and that's why we're working so hard to earn their votes by putting out these policy proposals and those policy proposals, which her campaign is actually doing to try to win these voters.
He stumped her by asking the follow-up, Emily. He to his credit, Peter Alexander of the wave hello backstage at the DNC, as opposed to asking about Biden's mental acuity and her roles or walking by. Anyway, found his medal and actually stood up and said, no, like the question was, what about the men? What are you going to do about it? And you could see her. She was stumped. She paused. She didn't know what to say. That's not the experience that I'm having. Look around. That's just dumb. That's not even a politically savvy answer.
No, and this is a problem that she has had, again, for years, is when she gets stumped, everyone can recognize it. It's it's the third grader who didn't read the book, but is giving the book report. It's stalling, it's nonsense, what a lot of people call word salads. Like, it just is so recognizable by people in the public. For example, when Al Sharpton, in that clip you played, asked Kamala Harris about, it's a ridiculous question. He should be embarrassed to ask on a media network because it was such a softball, but about, how she'll actually make a difference to people's kind of bottom lines and pocketbooks. She started by saying, this is a really important question. It's such an important question in this moment, this particular moment. And then, like, after 10 minutes of meandering through her brain, she came back and tried to land the plane. Right. Yeah. Dreams. Yes. Great. Excellence. She tried to land the plane and come full circle without ever saying anything. And it's so obvious. It really hurts her. That's why I think the best message discipline, or the only message discipline, is for her to frankly stop talking in unscripted scenarios, because she is really, really bad at this and panics and has never figured out how to answer on her toes questions that she's uncomfortable with. So it's the most predictable problem her campaign was going to have, but it's mystifying to me that they went with this pedal to the metal media strategy over the last couple of weeks, because people can recognize this and they really despise it because it makes them feel like Kamala Harris feels like they're stupid. Like, they can't see what they're seeing with their own two eyes, but of course everybody can.
She's not going to stop. She's going to talk to NBC tomorrow. She's reportedly, according to the Trump campaign, they have her schedule, going to take 2 days off to prepare for an interview with Hallie Jackson. And then she's going to do a CNN Trump town hall the day after that. So we're going to be getting a lot more. The only reason is because of these polls. Like, she sees how much trouble she's in. I do want to show you, this is yet another attempt, I guess, to get out there and appeal. I don't know. I guess this is more about ginning up the women's vote, because that's their other thing they've got to do. Women like her. Women are, tend to be pro-choice, and they are backing her double digits over Trump. And so I think this is an appeal by men to get the women voting. But you tell me. She's obsessed with celebrity, like all Democrats are. Look at this.
All the dads out there, I would say this is the time to really show your support for your daughters.
What do I love about being a girl dad? I love how much smarter she is than all the guys in the room already. I can tell that she's going to be a powerhouse. She is already at 2.5.
My daughter's 22 and a half, is a feminist, incredibly strong, and has really just inspired me in so many ways. I love her.
I'm the proud dad of Ella over here.
My vote for Kamala is an investment in my daughter's future.
I agree. I'm right there with you.
When the Dobbs decision came out 2+ years ago, I heard from Kamala right away, and then the next person was Ella. She texted me right away, essentially saying, we need to fight. This is not just an issue for women. This is an issue for men and families. And this is one of the many, many reasons why we've got to elect Kamala as president.
Never in my lifetime did I think that we would be having to fight for this and the fight for our own bodies. And I think it's really important for the men to step up and show that they actually support us and they're willing to put things on the line to help us.
All right, Ella Emhoff, first of all, you want in? You're in. You're fair game now. You want to come out there and make statements like that? Let's go. You're fair game. There's no more hands off because she's a daughter. That only applies to people like Barron Trump, who don't actually go out there and take political positions that are assailable. Secondly, Andy Cohen standing up and saying his 2.5-year-old daughter is already the smartest person in the room just proves that he is the only person who ever spends time with his 2.5-year-old daughter. He's the only one in the room. It's just him and the daughter. So it could be true. This is ridiculous. To whom exactly does this appeal? These two, effete men saying, oh, my daughter, she's a feminist. My 2-year-old's a feminist, and my 22-year-old's a feminist, and they're definitely voting Harris Walls.
First of all, Megyn, the only reason that I agree to be friends with Eliana is because we both love The Housewives. So this is a tough.
You have to appreciate him in that lane separately.
That's fair. Okay, I'll separate it.
I can relate to you fully. There's never been a better show than The Real Housewives of Miami, the reboot. I'm sorry, it's number one.
That's a hot take. Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's amazing. It's so good. They're all amazing. So, but I'm not saying Andy Cohen has done no good in his life. I appreciate that professional product of his, but his hot political takes are entirely unnecessary and unfactual. Go ahead, Eliana.
Look, I'm not like the authority on gender issues or anything, but that when I saw that ad, that strikes me as an ad that will motivate women. It didn't really strike me as an ad that would motivate men to get to the polls for whatever reason. I'm not sure I can quite explain why, but it just did not strike me as an ad geared at men.
Well, is that an ad or is it just an excerpt? I mean, they are pushing it online.
Something, whatever it is.
I don't know either, but like, who sits around and says, Ben Stiller and Andy Cohen will be the answer to our problems? That's who we really need.
Yeah.
Isn't she trying to get Republicans who are Nikki Haley voters? Isn't that the key to her improving these numbers?
Your NFL player coming to, sit down on the couch with a beer and tell the men to get off their butts and go vote for Kamala?
They did have some guy.
And instead,
go ahead, Emily.
Well, I was going to say, instead, they actually had Obama kind of talking down and calling black men sexist for being hesitant about Kamala Harris. They're really doing the opposite.
There was some athlete who did come out with a profane clip about, I can't remember what sport he played. Oh, we have it? Okay. Yeah, SOP 50. Dave Bautista, former wrestler. They went a different way with this one.
Fellas, we got to talk. A lot of men seem to think that Donald Trump is some kind of tough guy. He's not. I mean, look at him. He wears more makeup than Dolly Parton. He whines like a baby. The guy's afraid of birds. Donald Trump had his daddy pay a doctor to say his Will feet hurt so he could dodge the draft. Look at that gut. Like a garbage bag full of buttermilk. I mean, look how he drinks water.
All right, you get the point.
Like a little pink.
So they made an effort there.
Better.
Better than Ben Stiller, for sure. But that's a low bar.
Much better.
But that's also from a comedy show. It's not even the campaign. I mean, the campaign doesn't have the acumen that someone without much political acumen, Jimmy Kimmel and his writers, has.
It's true. No, you're exactly right. Wait, now I got to take a quick break. And when we come back, I got to mention these polls, and hopefully I'll have enough time to get to Lizzo. Stand by. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending, and who is paying the price? You are. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back, and you might be barely able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can help you. They have developed new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head to head with these guys, getting balances reduced, interest rates slashed, and penalties stopped. They create a plan to end your debt fast and put more cash in your pocket every month. And right now, Done with Debt is accepting new clients, but you need to act fast. Some credit relief programs expire. Before you even make another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com or just call 1-888-322-1054 right now. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. That's donewithdebt.com. Go to donewithdebt.com. Imagine waking up one day to find out your home no longer belongs to you. That somewhere, someplace, somebody's stolen your property right out from under you. It sounds unthinkable, but it is a sad reality for some American homeowners, and it's a risk for anyone who owns property. House stealing, that's what the FBI calls it. It's a form of real estate fraud where scammers leverage loopholes in the system to fraudulently transfer your home's title into their name. And then they take out loans against your property or even sell it behind your back. By the time you find out, the scammer's long gone, leaving you, the legitimate homeowner, to clean up the mess. But right now, triple lock protection is available through HomeTitleLock.com, offering 24/7 title monitoring, alerts, and restoration services. You can sign up today at HomeTitleLock.com and use the promo code Megyn to get 30 days of protection for free and a comprehensive title scan right now to make sure you're not already a victim. That's promo code Megyn, M-E-G-Y-N, and HomeTitleLock.com, or just use the link below. All right, ladies. So there is a poll that was the most accurate poll of 2020 in the presidential election, and it is by Atlas Intel, per Nate Silver, who said this was the most accurate poll in all of 2020. And they have just dropped a poll of likely voters, margin of error 2%. In the two-way race between Trump and Harris, they have Trump up 2.7 percentage points. In the full field, which includes the third parties like Jill Stein, Cornel West, they have Trump up 3.4 percentage points. Looking at independents, they have Trump up 9. And listen to this. Looking at racial breakdowns, among black voters, they have Harris at 67 and Trump at 32. 32. Now, most people tell you it is a pipe dream to suggest that the Republican candidate, even Trump, could get 32% of the black vote. But that is what the most accurate poll in 2020 is now saying is the current state of the race. And with Hispanic voters, Harris is at 53, Trump is at 44, which is a very hefty share of that vote for a Republican. They've got Trump up 3 in Michigan, Trump up 3 in Pennsylvania, Trump up 2 in Georgia, Trump up 0.6 in Arizona, Trump up 0.3 in Nevada, Harris up 2 in North Carolina, Harris up 1 in Wisconsin. Again, all of those are within the margin of error, all of those that I just read, except for the overall two-way and the overall full field, which are outside of their margin of error, showing Trump winning. I would suggest to you this is why she's everywhere. This is why she did Fox News. This is why she's going to do NBC. This is why she's going to do a CNN town hall. They're in a panic that she's going to lose this race. Emily?
This is a nightmare scenario for Democrats. This is exactly what they feared before Joe Biden dropped out of the race. And what's also interesting here is if the Atlas Intel poll has these numbers where they are right now, today, or whenever this poll came out, they're trending in the wrong direction for her in the last month ahead of the election. So by the time we actually get to election day, if they are not able to reverse course, that is to say, her numbers have gone down as they have experimented with the strategy of oversaturating the media. So if they double down on that strategy, it's very unlikely that she's able to reverse course, because if anything, her appearances seem to be getting worse and worse. I don't know if it's the exhaustion of the campaign or a panic over where the numbers are. I don't know over how close the race is, or just her natural ability has always lacked. I don't know. But if it continues this way, the numbers could get worse and worse for her by the time we're on election day. They could be outside of the margin of error on election day. That said, one final thought. This is Eliana and I were talking in the kind of virtual green room before we went on air about how quickly we'll know the results of the election. If you're someone who's really sick of election news and you just want to move on from it, imagine what's going to happen on election day and election night if this is an accurate snapshot of where voters are. These are going to be haggled over for days and weeks if the margins are as slim as they're looking right now.
You saw Arnold Mishkin, who runs the Fox decision desk. I worked with him for years, gave an interview to Politico saying maybe 5 days after election day, we'll know, maybe. And said that's, you may not remember it, but that's actually when we knew the last time too. Arizona was, of course, in contention and so on. But that's fine by me. I can wait. I'd rather know on election night, but I mean, 5 days is okay. 5 weeks is a different story. Eliana, this reminds me, I think I've told the story before, but I tried a jury trial when I was a lawyer, and we had a star witness on our side. And the whole case revolved around whether this guy was believed by the jury. If he was not believed, we were going to lose. If he was believed, we were going to win. And the judge, in trying to make us settle the case, because they always want you to settle it instead of go all the way to trial or to verdict, said, is he a good witness? To me and my co-counsel. And he was accurately zooming in on our biggest weakness, which was this guy was, I believe, a truth teller, but he wasn't likable. And so time in front of the jury with this witness was not going to help us, and our whole case revolved around this witness. Guess what? The verdict went against us. We got it reversed on appeal. But the judge was onto something. The quality of your main witness can make or break your case, and they are having a problem with the quality of Kamala Harris. So that's the problem, Eliana. She is no star witness, and more time with Kamala Harris, I would submit, is not the answer to their problem.
I just go back to, she's obviously struggling to close the deal. I read it the same way that you and Emily did. When she suddenly started doing interviews, and it's a problem for the campaign that she suddenly started doing them a month out from the election, and you can kind of see the rust in the hinges. They clearly made the decision to put her out there because they wanted to shake things up, and they were worried that the race was too close for comfort for them. So I think the Harris campaign does feel uncomfortable about the state of the race right now. Look, they don't know. The Trump campaign doesn't know. None of these pollsters know. Like, nobody knows nothing is the truth.
That's true.
But they're certainly, they feel that based on what they're seeing, this is just way too close for comfort. And they thought, we got to do something differently. We're going to put her out there. The problem for them is nobody watches a Kamala Harris interview and comes away thinking she really crushed that. I think they come away thinking, okay, she got through it. She didn't hurt herself. Certainly, I think that's the way people felt about the Bret Baier interview, where, folks on the right thought it was a catastrophe, but folks on the left thought, okay, she sort of muddled her way through it. But her fundamental problem is the failure to offer a positive policy vision or give people a sense of what she'd do while in office. And so I think there was a great LA Times piece this morning talking to independent voters, and people are saying, well, I don't like Trump, but things were actually sort of okay when he was president. And I have no idea what she's going to do. That was sort of that was basically the theme in this article. And I think that's where a lot of independents are stuck. They don't need to like her. They just need to have a sense of what she's going to do. And she's unwilling to articulate that.
Unwilling. All right, put a pin in that comment about independent voters, because there's more on that in the Atlas poll that I wanted to talk to you about. But you mentioned the Bret Baier interview. It was pilloried by Saturday Night Live, which brought back Alec Baldwin to play Bret Baier, and here was their take on how it went.
Now, when I interviewed President Trump, my first question was, what do you think is the most important issue facing our nation? So my first question for you is, give me the exact number of murderers you let loose in this country.
Well, Brett, I'm glad you brought up the topic of immigration.
1 million, 2 million?
Okay. The first thing we did in office was to introduce a bill.
10 million? Give me a number.
Brett, we came up with a bipartisan
But
bill.
did it have a number, though?
May I please finish?
I'm asking you to.
Well, then you have to listen.
Well, I can't because I'm talking.
Well, when will you stop?
Maybe when I go to bed?
Okay.
Madam Vice President, are you here to answer questions or just looking for a viral moment?
Oh, please, I am not looking for a viral moment. See how I don't let men interrupt my answers? Very demure, very mindful.
If you played out the Bret Baier interview of Donald Trump, you would have seen him interrupt Trump 20 times. I guess that escaped their notice. I don't know. What did you think?
I mean, it's just, you're making fun of a journalist for asking questions. Like, good one, you got it. I thought this was from the defenders of the free press. Here you have a journalist doing an aggressive, but I think appropriately aggressive interview of a political candidate who hasn't faced a lot of tough questions, and who, by the way, is the sitting vice president for an administration that has overseen a historic and unprecedented influx of migrants into the country that is front of center for just about every single voter. And, it's like, is that really funny? Is that the fodder for the comedy there? I don't know that the rest of the country saw that exactly, like Bret Baier being an aggressive journalist, as a punchline. And I have no idea why they brought Alec Baldwin back. Really not worth it. I hope they didn't pay him anything for that.
That reminded me of another moment in the Bret Baier interview that stuck out to me, where he was asking her for the first time of any journalist about her cover-up of Biden's mental acuity problems. And her response was, Donald Trump. And he said, I'm asking about you and, what you knew. And she said, Donald Trump is running for president. He's the one running for president. And I was dying for Brett to say, Joe Biden is the president right now, right? He's the president at this moment. All right, Eliana, this brings me back to the working class. So in this poll that we just went through, they took a look at how things are going with the working class, this Atlas Intel poll. And it's not going well for Kamala Harris. They put Trump with a 17-point advantage nationally with the working class voter. She has the advantage with college educated, but it's 57-40. And there is an advantage for him in Michigan as well, in those Rust Belt states with the working class. The Washington Post just reported the other day, Harris is drawing strong support among the college educated in suburban areas of Detroit, but to prevail in Michigan, she faces pressure to bolster her backing among union workers. And they talk about how she is struggling more with the blue collar voters that are more leaning Trump. Okay. So someone, I guess, thought the solution to this problem might be Lizzo, the singer, because she was born in Detroit. I don't know whether she was raised in Detroit. All I saw was that she was born in Detroit. And somebody didn't give the message to Lizzo that all we want you to do is come here and read this script we wrote for you, where you're talking about how great Detroit is. That's it. We don't want you to post. You don't need to help us by improving on your way here or your way out at the airport. This is a note to the campaign staff. You really got to cross every T with these celebrities because sometimes they go rogue. So here is Lizzo on her way to Detroit with her own message.
This is how a bad bitch saves democracy. You hoes couldn't even spell democracy. Ha!
This is how a bad bitch saves democracy. You hoes couldn't even spell democracy as she boards her private jet in an all-white pantsuit. Thoughts on that resonating with the auto union workers in Detroit, Eliana?
I mean, look, the one major shift that we've seen since Trump arrived on the scene in 2015 is the education gap between the parties just continue to rise, where voters without a college degree are migrating into the Republican camp. And you mentioned the African-American and Latino numbers in this Atlas poll. That includes minority voters. And the Democratic Party since then has increasingly become the parties of the MDs, JDs, and PhDs. As well as the party of, the BAs and the ABs, whatever, people with college degrees.
You lost us.
And I think, that is who Lizzo's speaking to. All right. Like the college educated female voters who are Harris's base.
Those Trump losers can't spell democracy.
Harris's base.
Oh, wow. She's going to really have to rethink that. There should be a sternly written letter from Team Harris to Lizzo, Emily, on could you just not help? Just help in only the ways we ask, please?
It's going to be in the sort of collection of fight song type artifacts we reflect on if Kamala Harris loses the election, because it actually reminds me of something I meant to say when we were talking about that video earlier of Andy Cohen, Ben Stiller, and Ella Emhoff about Emhoff wearing that ridiculous camo Harris Waltz hat, which, I was at the Trump rally in Butler covering it a couple of weeks ago, looking around. I was talking to one guy, felt like, being in Wisconsin at home with my family. This guy had a faded Mossy Oak hat on. He was wearing old Carhartts, non-ironically, and there were a whole lot of other people in the crowd dressed like him. And I just became offended on their behalf by all of the dumb Gen Z like kids I saw roaming around the DNC in those stupid Harris Waltz hats, like their fashion statements, because they have no respect for the people who actually wear those, that they are, trying to look like they're cool because they can keep up with them. Like, it is so, they just like truly have no understanding of and no respect for any of those people because of the binary that Lizzo just said there. This is about saving democracy. Oh, okay. So you're saying fundamentally, if you don't vote for Kamala Harris, you are destroying democracy as we know it in the United States. Take the damn hat off. Stop pretending like Tim Walz can hunt, or Tim Walz knows is like popular with people who can hunt. It's just so obnoxious. They can't do both at the same time. And the people are smart enough to see that.
It's true. It's cosplaying, they're putting on the camo and acting like you know anything about how true Trump voters, working class people, hunters for that matter, live, what's important to them. You're pretending, and they know all of that. All right, I'll leave it at that. Ladies, such a pleasure. I believe you can spell democracy, and Lizzo is mistaken. And I appreciate you for coming on with those big brains and joining us here.
Thank you, Megyn.
All right, to be continued until the next time. And don't forget, you guys, go to MegynKelly.com, and there you will be able to sign up for our once a week email. And we just added some fun behind the scenes pictures from the Al Smith dinner that Kamala Harris did not bother to show up at, or did she? Wait until you see the picture we just posted. MegynKelly.com.